Hey there! How is going, everybody? In this Python beginner tutorial, we will begin learning how to write functions. Functions are one of the most important things to learn in Python programming and will take us to the next level. We will learn how to create undefined functions, how to pass in arguments, and also how to return values. So, let's get started. Now, let's create our first function. So, I will use def keyword, which stands for definition, and let's just make a simple function here. To get started, I will call it first function. I type def first function. So, of course, we have here to put two parentheses, because that is where our parameters will go when we add those in. But now we don't have any parameters just yet. For that it will be empty for now. Now we have a function, but I will not write any code here. But because I can't leave it completely blank, for that, I will use pass keyword in order to fill this function later and use it. So I will come back to line and write pass. And then if I want to run our function, and we can just say print first underscore function. Print, open parentheses, call our function, first functions. And let's run the program and see what's happening with us. As you see, just gives none, because we are not doing anything with this function yet, and doesn't have a return value. So let's make some changes. So let's put a print statement in our function. I will just call it my first function. And we don't need to print our function because we did it inside the function. So I have to delete it from there and just run my program. And this is the result, my first function. So now I will talk about arguments. Arguments are specified after the function name inside the parentheses. You can add many arguments as you want, just separate them by a comma. For example, here in this function, I just used one argument that called name here. So when function is called, we pass along a first name which is used inside the function to print the full name. And then I just called the function and I just used three arguments: Python, Java, C++. Now let's run this function and see what's happening with us. As you see, here Python program, Java program, C++ program. So, do you know what's the difference between parameters and arguments? Actually, parameters and arguments can be used for the same things, information that are passed into a function. But the difference is that a parameter is the variable listed inside the parentheses in the function definition. But an argument is the value that is sent to the function when called. In our example, the name is parameter and Python, Java, C++ are arguments. By default, a function must be called with the correct number of arguments. That means, if your function expects 2 arguments, you have to call the function with 2 arguments, not more and not less. Here, the function expects 2 arguments. For that, I added 2 ones, Python and program. But, if you try to call it the function by 1 and 3 arguments, you will get error, and let's try that. So I will delete this one from here, and I will try to call it by 1 argument, and I will run. This is an error, and if you run it like this, through Python program. Okay, and now I will talk about arbitrary argument. So if you don't know how argument that you have to use into a function, add a star before the parameter name in the function definition. This way, the function will receive a tuple of arguments and can access the items by this way. So here I have a tuple that's called languages, and then I printed my favorite programming language is languages second index in this tuple. Here in my tuple I have the Java, C++, and the second index is Python. So let's see when we run this program what's happened with us. As you see, my favorite programming language is Python. Also, I will talk about default parameter value. Our example here shows how to use a default parameter value. If you call a function without arguments, it's because we use a default value. So here, I have a parameter languages that's Python, have a value, has a value of Python. And let's see when I run this program, what's happened with me. As you see here, when I don't use arguments here, I just call the function with empty arguments. It's take the first value Python, that is here. Okay? Actually, I talked a lot about functions and arguments, but I didn't say which type of arguments can a function take. So you can send any data types of arguments to function, like strings, list, numbers, dictionary. And it will be treated as the same data type inside the function. For example, if you send a list as an argument, it will still be a list when the function called. Like here in our example, I have a list that's called programming languages. Inside it there is Java, Python, C#. And also I called my functions with this list arguments. And then let's run this function and see what's happened with us. As you see, I have the same list, Java, Python, C#. Also, in the example before, I talked about functions with print functions. But in the other way, to let a function return a value, use a return statement like our example. For example here, I have a function that takes this argument, and then let's run this and see what's happened with us. As you see, I have these results. So using return statements is so simple, as you see. As we know, Python is a very rich programming language, so it has a number of functions built into it that are always available and easy to use. They are listed here. So let's start. First, this function returns the absolute value of a number. This function returns true if all items in a iterable object are true. Any function returns true if any item in an iterable object is true. Float returns a floating point number. Formats a specific value. ID returns the ID of an object. Input allowing user input. Int returns an integer number. Length returns the length of an object. List returns a list. Max returns the largest item in a iterable. Open opens a file and returns a file object. So, as a conclusion, functions are an important part of programming language. It has to break our program into smaller and modular parts. As our program grows larger and larger, functions make it more organized and better. So that's all for today, and thank you for watching my video, and don't forget to like my video. Thank you.